Welcome back, parents. Look, if you've ever watched your kid hunched over their phone and felt that familiar pit of dread in your stomach, you are definitely not alone. So let's jump right into this explainer and demystify the deeply complex relationship between screen time and teen anxiety, using the absolute latest clinical evidence. We're going to break down exactly what's happening inside their developing brains, why the digital world pulls them in so tightly, and most importantly, what actually works to help them.
All right, here is my roadmap for today. We'll be covering the teen anxiety epidemic, the developing social brain, the digital feedback loop, passive versus active screen use, why blanket bans fail, and finally, evidence-based digital wellness.
Okay, part 1, the teen anxiety epidemic. Let's start by just looking at the sheer scale of youth anxiety, mostly to validate what you are probably already seeing at home. Trust me, it is not just in your head. The landscape of childhood has genuinely shifted. A staggering 31.9% of adolescents will meet the criteria for an anxiety disorder between the ages of 13 and 18. This comes straight from comprehensive developmental epidemiology data, meaning essentially 1 in 3 teens is grappling with clinical-level anxiety. It is literally the most common class of mental disorder for this age group. But to really understand how screens fit into all of this, we first need to define what anxiety actually is. Because unlike a present-oriented fear, like, say, suddenly running from a barking dog, anxiety is a future-oriented, diffuse state of apprehension. It's completely characterized by that exhausting, catastrophic what-if thinking. What if I'm left out? What if I look stupid? It's a relentless cycle of anticipating future ambiguous threats. And as we're going to see, modern digital environments are practically built to accelerate this exact type of what-if thinking. Moving right along to part 2, the developing social brain. We can actually trace this vulnerability to anxiety right back to your child's biological development. If we track normative fears by age, there's a really fascinating shift. Around ages 8 or 9, kids are mostly worried about concrete stuff, right? Getting hurt, big storms, physical threats. But check out ages 10 to 12. As they develop what psychologists call formal operational thinking, they gain the cognitive capacity to imagine what other people are thinking about them. So their fears naturally shift away from concrete dangers and move toward intense, abstract worries about social evaluation and peer rejection. By the time they're 13 to 18, their dominant fears are almost entirely rooted in social anxiety and abstract existential worry. And wow, the neuroscience totally backs this up. Inside their heads, there is literally a massive construction project going on. The amygdala, which is basically the brain's rapid threat detection alarm system, goes into overdrive during puberty, becoming incredibly highly reactive to social stimuli like peer acceptance or rejection. Meanwhile, the medial prefrontal cortex, which acts as the brain's brake pedal to regulate those anxious emotions, well, that matures super slowly well into their 20s. So during these preteen and teen years, they are operating with a hypersensitive alarm system and a really, really weak brake pedal. Which brings us to part 3, the digital feedback loop. This concept brilliantly illustrates exactly why screens become such a huge focal point for developing kids. A 2025 systematic review by Vasconcelos and colleagues identified this bidirectional feedback loop. Basically, it's not just that screens cause anxiety. It goes both ways. Think about it. Step 1, a teen feels anxious or stressed about their changing social world. Step 2, they ramp up their screen use to cope, to distract themselves or avoid those uncomfortable feelings. Step 3, while they're online, they get hit with heavy social comparison, cyberbullying, or major FOMO, the fear of missing out. And step 4, that exposure spikes their anxiety even higher, which drives them right back to step 1 to seek out more digital distraction. It is a continuous, self-reinforcing loop. Now, the crucial point here is that this totally shifts the blame. It's not just the device being this toxic object, and it's certainly not the child just being weak. The clinical data actually shows the effect sizes of screen time on anxiety are modest but consistent. Why? Because the danger lies in the behavioral pattern itself. It's all about how the screens are being used to either process or avoid processing normal developmental stress. Let's look at part 4, passive versus active screen use. Understanding this distinction is a total game changer because it proves that healthy digital engagement is absolutely possible. We really have to contrast these two modes of behavior. On one hand, we've got anxiety-driven scrolling, what we all know as doomscrolling. That's passive consumption. It's staring at idealized images, constantly comparing yourself to others, and just sitting there as a passive target for FOMO. But on the flip side, we have healthy digital engagement. This is active. This is your teen using the device to create something, learn a new skill, play collaborative games, or maintain genuine connections with their real-life friends. The device itself isn't the enemy here. The passive, anxiety-driven consumption is. All right, part 5. Why blanket bans fail.
When you see your kid anxious, your natural parental instinct is probably to just grab the phone and lock it away completely. But clinical evidence strongly advises against that. Over-control and blanket bans, they rarely fix the root cause. For one, taking the phone away doesn't cure the underlying social anxiety or that what-if thinking. It just removes the current symptom. Second, it strips away a developing teen's autonomy right when they desperately need to be practicing independence. And third, from a psychological standpoint, it completely eliminates opportunities for graded exposure. If they never face digital social challenges, they literally cannot build the emotional resilience they need to navigate the modern world.
Plus, we have to remember that peer relationships become a teenager's absolute primary reference group around age 11 or 12. Cutting them off entirely from their digital social world can actually do far more harm than good. Longitudinal studies on school transitions show that having even one close friend is a massive protective factor against anxiety. If their main way of maintaining that one crucial friendship is through a screen, a blanket ban just rips away their social life raft.
Finally, Part 6, Evidence-Based Digital Wellness. Okay, so what does actually work? Let's get into some actionable tools drawn from cognitive behavioral therapy, which is the gold standard for youth anxiety. First off, your boundary setting has to evolve chronologically. You simply cannot parent a 16-year-old's digital life the way you do an 8-year-old's. I mean, you can try, but it's going to end badly. At ages 8 to 9, they absolutely need parent-led routines and very concrete physical rules, like devices always charge in the kitchen at night. Around ages 10 to 12, when those social fears really spike, you transition to scaffolded boundaries. You do collaborative check-ins, asking them how certain apps make them feel. Then by ages 13 to 18, the ultimate goal is self-directed habits. You step back from being the digital police and become an advising guide, helping them monitor their own mental health.
So instead of handing down strict bans, empower them. Implement collaborative boundary setting. Ask your kids what they think a healthy screen limit is. You would be shocked at how often they already know when they're overdoing it. Teach them digital literacy. Help them understand that social media algorithms are literally engineered to keep them scrolling, and that those images are just highly curated highlight reels. And try using a CBT tool called cognitive restructuring. When they express an anxious, what-if fear about something online, help them talk back to it. Ask, okay, what is the actual evidence that this bad thing is going to happen? Teach them to challenge their own anxiety. I want to leave you with one final, pretty provocative thought. Kids learn infinitely more from what we do than from what we say. So before we can effectively fix our teen screen time and alleviate their digital anxiety, do we first need to examine our own? Are we doomscrolling at the dinner table? Are we letting our own notifications interrupt our connection with them? By modeling healthy boundaries ourselves, we give our kids the absolute best blueprint for navigating the digital world with a calm, resilient mind. Thanks so much for tuning into this explainer, and good luck out there.